The dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight as I stood in Sarah's closet, my hands trembling on the old cedar box that held the last fragments of my wife's life. 8 months since the cancer took her, and I still couldn't bring myself to sort through her things. But with the mortgage past due and 3 hungry mouths to feed, I had no choice but to face this particular demon. "Dad?" Lizzie's voice cracked from behind me. My 15-year-old daughter, the spitting image of her mother, stood in the doorway, her dark eyes clouded with concern. "Do you want me to help?" I forced a smile, the kind that had become my armor since Sarah's passing. "Sure, sweetheart. Just be careful with everything, okay?" We worked in silence, the kind that weighs heavy with unspoken grief. Lizzie took the left side of the closet while I tackled the right, methodically sorting through Sarah's life. Designer blazers she'd saved for special occasions. The red dress from our 20th anniversary. Each item carried a memory, a ghost of happiness that now felt like a knife to the gut. The cedar box sat between us, its brass latch tarnished with age. Sarah had always kept it locked, claiming it held old family photos too precious to risk damage. I'd never questioned it, trust had been the foundation of our marriage. But now, as I inserted the small key I'd found in her jewelry box, something cold and unsettling crept up my spine. The latch clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo through the closet. Inside, beneath a layer of yellow tissue paper, lay a stack of documents. My throat tightened as I lifted the first one, a marriage certificate. But the names were wrong. Sarah Elizabeth Peterson to James Michael Carter, dated 15 years before our own wedding. "Dad?" Lizzie's voice seemed to come from far away. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't answer. My hands moved mechanically through the papers, each one adding another crack to my world. Divorce papers. Letters. And then, my heart stopped, a birth certificate. Michael James Carter, born to Sarah Elizabeth Peterson and James Michael Carter. "Oh my God," Lizzie whispered, peering over my shoulder. "Dad, did Mom have another family?" The question hung in the air like poison gas. My mind raced through 23 years of marriage, searching for signs I might have missed. Sarah's occasional unexplained absences. The way she'd sometimes cry while watching certain movies about lost children. The mysterious phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. "No," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "There has to be an explanation. Your mother wouldn't." But she had. The evidence lay in my trembling hands, a secret life, carefully documented and hidden away in a cedar box that smelled of betrayal. I thought of our 3 children, Lizzie, Tom, and little Amy, and wondered what other secrets their mother had taken to her grave. "We need to forget about this," Lizzie suddenly declared, trying to snatch the papers from my hands. "Mom's gone, Dad. Whatever this is, it doesn't matter anymore." But it did matter. It mattered because every memory I had of Sarah now felt tainted, every moment of our life together called into question. It mattered because somewhere out there was a boy, now a man, who shared Sarah's blood. A son she'd never mentioned, never acknowledged, never. The sound of glass shattering broke through my thoughts. Lizzie had knocked over a framed photo of our family vacation to Hawaii, Sarah's last good summer before the cancer. The glass splintered across the hardwood floor, creating a web of cracks across Sarah's smiling face. "I'm sorry," Lizzie sobbed, dropping to her knees to gather the broken pieces. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." I watched my daughter cut her finger on the broken glass, a drop of blood falling onto Sarah's frozen smile, and something inside me hardened. The truth was out there, a truth that could either destroy us or set us free. And despite the pain it might cause, despite Lizzie's tears and my own shattered heart, I knew I had to find it. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, kneeling beside her. "We'll clean this up together." But as I helped her gather the broken glass, my mind was already racing ahead, plotting a course through the wreckage of my past to find the answers Sarah had hidden. I didn't know it then, but that moment in the closet, with the cedar box open and my daughter's blood staining a broken photograph, was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything we thought we knew about family, love, and the price of keeping secrets. Outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, as if nature itself was preparing for the tempest to come. I caught my reflection in a shard of broken glass, a man I barely recognized, with hollow eyes and lines of grief etched deep into his face. By the time this was over, I wondered if I'd recognize anything about my life at all. And somewhere in the city, a man named Michael James Carter went about his day, unaware that his world was about to collide with mine in ways neither of us could imagine. The truth has teeth. It tears through the fabric of reality, leaving jagged edges that can never quite fit back together. In the days following our discovery in Sarah's closet, I felt those teeth sink deeper with every breath, every memory, every moment I looked at our family photos and wondered what other lies lurked behind her smile. I sat in my home office at 3 a.m., surrounded by the debris of my investigation, old photo albums, bank statements, and the damning contents of that cedar box spread across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. The house creaked and settled around me, its familiar sounds now seeming as deceptive as the woman I'd shared it with for 23 years. The computer screen's harsh glow illuminated Sarah's old emails, recovered from a password-protected account I discovered hidden in her papers. Each message was like a knife twist, revealing fragments of a life she'd kept carefully partitioned from ours. Most were mundane: bills, appointments, spam. But every few months, there were messages to someone named Karen Wright, carrying whispers of the past I never knew existed. The harder I try to bury it, the more it haunts me, Sarah had written 5 years ago. Sometimes I see a young man on the street who might be his age, and my heart stops. Does he have my eyes? My mother's smile? Does he hate me for what I did? My fingers trembled over the keyboard as I copied Karen Wright's email address. A quick search revealed she worked at the same hospital where Sarah had been a nurse. Still worked there, in fact. The same hospital where my wife had spent her final days, Karen Wright's name appearing occasionally on the visitor logs I'd never thought to question. Dad? I nearly jumped out of my skin. Lizzie stood in the doorway, her face pale in the computer's light. She looked so much like Sarah in that moment that it physically hurt to look at her. You should be in bed, sweetheart, I said, quickly minimizing the email window. So should you. She stepped into the room, her bare feet silent on the carpeted floor. You can't keep doing this. Mom wouldn't want Dash. Your mother lost the right to want anything the moment she decided to hide a son from me for 23 years, I snapped, instantly regretting the harshness in my voice. Lizzie flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Maybe she had a good reason. Maybe she was protecting him, or us, or Dash. Protecting us from what? The truth? That's not protection, Lizzie. That's betrayal. You're obsessed. Her voice cracked with emotion. Ever since you found that box, it's like you're trying to destroy every good memory we have of her. Tom barely talks anymore, Amy keeps asking why you're always angry, and I. She stopped, choking back tears. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so consumed by Sarah's betrayal that I'd been blind to the damage my obsession was inflicting on the children I still had. I stood up, reaching for my daughter, but she backed away. Karen Wright, she read from my computer screen. Is that him? The other one? No, she was your mother's friend. She might know where to find him, Michael. The name felt foreign on my tongue, like a splinter working its way under my skin. And then what? Lizzie's eyes blazed with a mixture of fear and anger. What are you going to do? Show up at his door and tell him his dead mother never wanted him? Destroy his life like you're destroying ours? Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with truth I wasn't ready to face. Before I could respond, she turned and fled the room, her footsteps echoing through the sleeping house like accusations. I turned back to the computer, my reflection ghostly in the dark screen. Sarah's words from her email seemed to mock me. The harder I try to bury it, the more it haunts me. Now her secret was haunting all of us, spreading through our family like a virus, infecting every moment, every memory, every relationship. My phone buzzed, a text from Karen Wright. I'd messaged her hours ago, a carefully worded inquiry about Sarah's past. Her response made my blood run cold. I knew this day would come. Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. St. Michael's Cemetery, Sarah's grave. There are things you need to know, things Sarah made me promise never to tell. But she's gone now, and the truth needs to come out before it destroys more lives than it already has. Outside my office window, the first hints of dawn began to paint the sky in shades of blood and bruise. In a few hours, I would stand at my wife's grave and learn the secrets she'd taken to it. But as I listened to my daughter's muffled sobs through the wall, I wondered if Lizzie was right, if my pursuit of truth was really just another form of destruction. The photo on my desk showed our family in happier times, Sarah's arms around all 3 children, her smile radiant and seemingly genuine. I touched her face through the glass, remembering how she'd felt in those arms myself, wondering if every embrace had been tainted by the weight of her secrets. "What else did you hide from me, Sarah?" I whispered to her frozen image. "And what will it cost our children to find out?" The silence that answered held no comfort, only the promise of more revelations to come, each one threatening to shatter what little remained of the life we'd built together. The cemetery air hung thick with August heat, pressing against my skin like a confession seeking absolution. Sarah's headstone stood before me, its polished surface reflecting a distorted version of the man I'd become, hollow-eyed, unshaven, haunted by questions that had no right answers. The inscription mocked me with its simplicity, "Beloved wife and mother." How easily granite could lie. Karen arrived exactly at 2, her scrubs partially hidden beneath a light cardigan despite the heat. 20 years as an ER nurse had left their mark in the careful way she moved, always conserving energy, always prepared for the next crisis. She'd been at Sarah's side during those final weeks, I remembered. How many secrets had passed between them in those morphine-clouded hours? "You look like hell, Sam," she said, placing a small bunch of white lilies against the headstone. Sarah's favorite flowers, another detail that felt loaded with hidden meaning now. Funny how finding out your dead wife had a secret child can do that to you. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me, acid-etched and dangerous. Karen's face remained professionally neutral, the same expression she probably used to deliver bad news to waiting families. "Sarah knew this day might come. She left something for you." She reached into her bag, withdrew a sealed envelope. "She made me promise to give it to you only if you discovered the truth about Michael on your own." The envelope felt heavy in my hands, weighted with 2 decades of secrets. Sarah's handwriting on the front, my name in her familiar slanted script, sent a surge of emotion through me so complex it defied categorization. Love, hate, grief, rage, they merged and separated like oil and water, refusing to settle into anything recognizable. "She was 17 when she had Michael," Karen said softly, her eyes fixed on the headstone. "James Carter was 28, her high school tennis coach. He manipulated her, isolated her from her family, married her as soon as she turned 18. By 19, she had a baby and a black eye that wouldn't fade." Each word landed like a body blow, restructuring my understanding of the woman I thought I knew. "She could have told me," I said, but the argument felt hollow even as I made it. "Could she?" Karen's laugh held no humor. "You, the successful architect with the perfect family plan. The man who spent 3 years designing your dream home down to the last detail. Would you have married her if you'd known she was damaged goods with a child she'd abandoned?" The truth of it cut deep. I'd been younger then, more rigid, obsessed with creating the perfect life I thought I deserved. The revelation would have sent me running, we both knew it. The knowledge sat like poison in my gut. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers, unfolding pages dense with Sarah's handwriting. The first lines grabbed me by the throat. "My dearest Sam, if you're reading this, then you've discovered my greatest sin and my deepest wound. Before you judge me, before you let this destroy everything we built together, please understand, I never abandoned Michael. James took him. And I spent 20 years searching for my son in secret, afraid that finding him would mean losing you and our children." The pages blurred as tears I hadn't expected burned my eyes. I looked up to find Karen watching me with a mixture of compassion and wariness. "She found him, didn't she?" My voice cracked. That's what the emails meant. She found Michael. Karen nodded slowly. 3 years ago. She hired a private investigator, tracked him to a halfway house in Detroit. James had thrown him away when he remarried, left him to bounce through foster homes. By the time Sarah found him. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Michael was troubled. Angry. When she tried to approach him, to explain. He rejected her. The pieces clicked into place, Sarah's unexplained depression that spring, the mysterious 3-day conference she'd attended, the way she'd held our children so tightly when she returned. He threatened to expose everything, to destroy your family if she ever contacted him again. It broke something in her, Sam. The doctors said the cancer came out of nowhere, but I saw her give up, saw her stop fighting. Karen's professional demeanor cracked, tears sliding down her cheeks. She loved you, loved your children more than life itself. But the guilt of Michael, the weight of that secret, it ate her alive. I sank to my knees in the cemetery grass, Sarah's letter clutched in my fist. The truth I'd been so desperate to uncover lay scattered around me like shrapnel, each piece drawing blood in its own unique way. My wife hadn't been the deceiver I'd imagined, but something far more complex, a wounded girl who'd grown into a woman trying desperately to protect the happiness she'd found, even as her past bled her dry. "There's more," Karen said quietly. "Michael, he's not in Detroit anymore." Sarah kept tabs on him through me, even after he threatened her. "He's here in town, has been for 6 months. Working construction, trying to get his life together. The address is in the envelope." The sun beat down mercilessly as I absorbed this final revelation. Somewhere in this city, my wife's firstborn walked the same streets as our children, carried the same blood, harbored the same wounds. The truth hadn't set anyone free, it had only drawn a map to more pain, more complications, more impossible choices. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me. "Does he know she's dead?" Karen shook her head. "I tried to tell him when she passed. He hung up on me." The letter in my hand held the full story of Sarah's private war, her battles, her sacrifices, her desperate attempts to bridge 2 worlds that were never meant to touch. But as I stood before her grave, I realized the war wasn't over. She'd merely passed it on to me, leaving me to decide whether to retreat into comfortable ignorance or advance into uncertain territory where redemption and destruction waited with equal patience. "Thank you," I said to Karen, though the words felt inadequate. "For keeping her secrets. For being there when I couldn't finish." She touched my arm briefly, a gesture of understanding between 2 people united by their love for a complicated woman. "What will you do now?" I looked at Sarah's headstone one last time, seeing beyond the simple epitaph to the complex truth it concealed. "I'm going to finish what she started," I said. "For better or worse, I'm going to find our son." The wind picked up, scattering cemetery leaves across Sarah's grave like memories we couldn't quite hold on to. As Karen walked away, I remained, reading my wife's letter in the fading afternoon light, each word rebuilding and destroying my world simultaneously. Tomorrow, I would begin the impossible task of finding Michael. But today, I allowed myself to mourn, not just for Sarah, but for the young girl she'd been, the choices she'd been forced to make, and the peace she'd never found. The construction site loomed before me like a skeleton of possibilities, steel beams reaching toward a merciless summer sky. Somewhere in that maze of industrial resurrection, Michael worked, unknowingly building new structures while the foundations of his own past crumbled beneath him. I sat in my car, Sarah's letter burning a hole in my pocket, watching workers in hard hats move through their choreographed dance of creation. My phone buzzed again, another message from Lizzie. "Dad, please come home. We need to talk." I'd left her with Tom and Amy at Karen's house, unable to face their questions, their accusations, their raw need for stability I no longer knew how to provide. The guilt of my abandonment, however temporary, nested alongside Sarah's secrets in my conscience, breeding new regrets with every passing hour. A figure emerged from the site office, and my heart seized. Even from this distance, I could see Sarah in his movements, that characteristic tilt of the head, the way his hands moved when he spoke. Michael Carter, 28 years old, his mother's son in ways he'd never understood. The photo from his employee file hadn't done justice to the haunting familiarity of his features. I stepped out of the car, the heat hitting me like a physical blow. My carefully rehearsed speech evaporated, leaving only the raw, jagged edges of truth. How do you tell a stranger they're the missing piece of a puzzle they never knew existed? That their mother died loving them from a distance that had nothing to do with Miles. Michael Carter. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. He turned, and the full force of Sarah's eyes stared back at me from a face hardened by years of abandonment. Recognition flickered there, not of me, but of something he saw in my expression. The look of someone carrying unwanted revelations. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying." His voice was pure Detroit steel, defensive walls forged in foster homes and halfway houses. "I'm not selling anything. I'm Sam Winchester. Sarah's husband." The name hit him like a bullet, his body actually jerking backward. In that instant, I saw the boy he must have been, scared, confused, angry at a mother who'd vanished into the ether of broken promises. "Get out of here." Each word came carefully measured, threaded with a violence barely contained. I told her to stay away. "She's dead now, and whatever guilt trip you're here to lay on me died with her." I pulled Sarah's letter from my pocket, its pages worn from my obsessive reading. "She wrote this for you too. About what really happened, about James Carter, about Dash." "James Carter?" Michael laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "My father? The great tennis coach who threw me away when his new wife didn't want damaged goods around? That the story she fed you?" Workers had stopped to watch us, sensing the electric charge of confrontation in the air. Michael's hands clenched and unclenched, a rhythmic telegraph of suppressed rage. "She tried to find you," I said, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming retreat. "For 20 years, she looked for you. When she finally did, she found a criminal." His smile was a weapon turned inward. A 3-time loser trying to go straight. Not exactly the reunion she dreamed of, was it? So she ran back to her perfect family, her perfect life, leaving me in the gutter where I belonged. Just like always. The truth rose in my throat like bile, about her secret surveillance, her private agony, the cancer that had bloomed in the soil of her regret. But looking at him, seeing the raw wound of abandonment still bleeding after all these years, I realized that truth could be another form of violence. "She never stopped loving you," I said instead, holding out the letter. "And she never ran. She died thinking she'd failed you twice, first by losing you, then by not being strong enough to heal what James broke." Something flickered in his expression, a hairline crack in the armor of his anger. For a moment, I saw Sarah in him so clearly it stole my breath, that same vulnerable strength, that capacity for deep feeling masked by deeper fears. "I have a daughter your age," I continued, pressing my advantage into that crack. "Lizzie. She's the one who found the box with your birth certificate, who started this whole avalanche of truth. She has Sarah's eyes too." "Your eyes." Michael stared at the letter in my outstretched hand, his own fingers twitching with suppressed desire to grab it, to devour the words of a mother he'd never truly known. The air between us felt charged with the potential energy of collapse or connection, no middle ground possible. "I don't need this," he said finally, but his voice had lost its steel edge. "I built a life without her, without any of you. It's not much, but it's mine." "Then keep building it," I said, leaving the letter on a stack of lumber between us. "But build it knowing the whole truth, not just the broken pieces James Carter left you with." Sarah thought she had to choose between her past and her future. She was wrong. And now we're all paying for that mistake. I turned to leave, each step an exercise in restraint. Behind me, I heard the rustle of paper, Michael snatching up the letter before the wind could claim it. I didn't look back, didn't need to see his face as he read Sarah's final confession. Some moments deserve their privacy, even in the midst of public revelation. My phone buzzed again as I reached the car. This time it was Karen. Lizzie ran away. She left a note saying she's going to find Michael herself. Sam, she knows where he lives. The world tilted on its axis as past and present collided. Somewhere in this city, my youngest daughter was racing toward her unknown brother, carrying all our collective pain and secrets like a lit fuse. And I was caught in the middle, trying to prevent an explosion that might destroy the very family I was desperate to save. I looked back at the construction site. Michael had disappeared, taking Sarah's letter and its truths with him. But his absence felt temporary now, a pause rather than an ending. The real question was whether I could reach Lizzie before she forced a confrontation none of us were ready to face. The engine roared to life under my hands, and I pulled away from the site, leaving behind a son I'd never known I had and racing toward a daughter I feared I was losing. Sarah's voice seemed to whisper from the letter I could still feel in my pocket, "Some bridges can't be burned, only rebuilt. But first, you have to clear away the ashes of what was lost." The city blurred past my windows like a fever dream as I raced through streets that suddenly seemed labyrinthine, each wrong turn a betrayal of my desperate need to reach Lizzie. My daughter's face haunted the rearview mirror, not as she was now, but in kaleidoscopic fragments of memory, her first steps, her mother's smile perfectly replicated in miniature, the way she'd looked standing in my office doorway last night, already slipping away from me like water through desperate fingers. Karen's voice crackled through the car's speakers, "His apartment's on Marshall Street, above the old hardware store. Sam, she left almost an hour ago." An hour. The word pulsed in my temples like a countdown. 60 minutes in which my 15-year-old daughter had carried her broken heart through unfamiliar streets, seeking answers in the most dangerous possible place, from a stranger who carried our family's pain like a loaded weapon. She's trying to save us, I realized aloud, the truth of it hitting me with the force of revelation. All this time, I've been excavating Sarah's past like an archaeological dig, searching for artifacts of betrayal. But Lizzie, she's been trying to preserve what's left of our future. "Just get there, Sam." Karen's voice held the steady calm of someone who talked countless families through their worst moments. "Before she forces a confrontation none of you are ready for." The line went dead, leaving me alone with the ghost of Sarah in the passenger seat. I could almost hear her voice, that particular tone she used when our children were in danger. "Faster, Sam. Our baby needs us." But Sarah wasn't here. Her secrets had started this avalanche, and now I was the only one who could prevent it from burying us all. Marshall Street emerged from the urban maze like a set piece from everyone's worst expectations, a corridor of faded dreams and deferred maintenance where hope came to retire on disability. The hardware store hulked on the corner, its windows covered in hand-painted signs advertising discounts that had yellowed with age. Above it, second-story windows stared down like jaundiced eyes. And there, on the crumbling stoop, sat Lizzie. My relief at finding her collapsed into fresh terror when I saw she wasn't alone. Michael stood in the doorway above her, Sarah's letter crushed in his white-knuckled grip. Even from across the street, I could read the tension in his posture, a man teetering on the edge between rage and revelation. I was out of the car before it fully stopped, my feet carrying me toward them with the desperate momentum of paternal fear. But something in their tableau made me halt at the foot of the steps. Their voices carried clearly in the summer air, continuing a conversation I'd interrupted midstream. "She used to write me letters," Michael was saying, his voice raw with memory. "For the first year after James took me. She'd send them to every foster home, every juvenile facility. I never answered. Eventually, they stopped coming. But she never stopped writing them." Lizzie's voice held that same blend of strength and vulnerability I'd heard in Sarah's final days. "We found a box in her closet. Hundreds of letters she never sent, tracking every year of your life she missed. Your 18th birthday. Your graduation, or when it should have been. The day you got arrested. The day you got out. She kept writing, even when she had no address to send them to." I watched Michael absorb this, saw the minute shifts in his expression as anger warred with a deeper, more primal need, the need every child has to believe they were wanted, were loved, were worth fighting for. "Why are you here?" he asked finally, the question aimed as much at me as at Lizzie. "What do you want from me?" Lizzie stood, turning to face him with Sarah's unflinching grace. "I want my family back. Mom's gone, and Dad's drowning in secrets, and my little sister cries herself to sleep because she thinks we're all falling apart. And maybe you're the only one who can understand how that feels. To have a family torn apart by things nobody wants to talk about." The world held its breath. In that moment, I saw them as they truly were, not just Sarah's children, but mirrors of her divided heart. Lizzie, raised in love but now grappling with the complexity of human truth. Michael, forged in abandonment but carrying the same capacity for connection that had made Sarah such a remarkable mother. "I'm not your salvation," Michael said, but the defensive walls in his voice had developed hairline fractures. "I'm not some missing puzzle piece that's going to make everything make sense again." "No," I found myself saying, drawing both their gazes. "You're not a puzzle piece. You're a person. A person who deserves to know that his mother loved him until her last breath. That she died trying to find a way to bridge the gap between the family she lost and the family she built." Michael's hands trembled around Sarah's letter. She had 20 years to bridge that gap. And she failed, I acknowledged, climbing the steps slowly, giving him time to retreat if he needed to. "She failed you, and that failure poisoned her joy, haunted her happiness, and ultimately helped kill her. But her failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. Not unless we let it be." Lizzie moved then, crossing the distance between herself and Michael with the fearless grace of youth. Before he could react, she'd wrapped her arms around him in a fierce embrace. "You're my brother," she said simply. "And I'm tired of pretending that doesn't matter." I watched Michael's resistance crumble, saw his arms rise hesitantly to return his sister's embrace. In that moment, he looked achingly young, not the hardened ex-con, not the abandoned son, but simply a man discovering that family could be both wound and healing, prison and liberation. The summer light caught the tears on his cheeks, transforming them into something like diamonds, precious evidence of walls beginning to crack. And in their shared embrace, I saw the first fragile bridge forming across the chasm Sarah's secrets had carved through all our lives. But as I watched my children, all of Sarah's children, begin the delicate work of healing, a new fear took root in my heart. Because I knew that some revelations came with a price. And somewhere in this city, there was a man named James Carter who had destroyed his son's life once before. What would he do when he discovered that the past he'd buried was rising from its grave, threatening the comfortable life he'd built on the ruins of his abandoned family? The answer to that question was coming. And like everything else in this journey of revelation, it would demand its pound of flesh before the truth could finally set us free. The truth isn't a single revelation but a cascade of moments, each one reshaping the landscape of your understanding until the territory of your life becomes unrecognizable. Standing in Michael's cramped apartment, watching my children, all of Sarah's children, navigate the delicate choreography of newly discovered kinship, I felt each truth we'd unearthed shift and settle like tectonic plates beneath my feet. But the earthquake wasn't finished. It arrived in the form of heavy footsteps on the stairs, a shadow darkening the doorway that turned Michael's face to stone. James Carter filled the frame with the entitled confidence of a man accustomed to controlling narratives, his tennis coach's physique gone soft with age and success. "Well," he said, his smile a masterpiece of calculated charm, "isn't this a touching family reunion?" The temperature in the room plummeted. Michael's body coiled with barely contained violence, while Lizzie pressed herself against my side, instinctively seeking protection from this man who had shattered her brother's childhood. I felt the weight of Sarah's letter in my pocket like a loaded gun. "How did you find us?" Michael's voice carried the echoes of every foster home, every juvenile detention center, every moment of abandonment this man had authored. "Please." James waved the question away like an annoying fly. "You think I haven't kept tabs on you?" My greatest disappointment, my constant reminder of youthful indiscretion. His eyes flickered to Lizzie, then to me. Though I see Sarah's indiscretions came in many forms. The rage that surged through me was pristine in its clarity. This wasn't just the man who had abused Sarah's trust, he was the architect of a generational trauma that had poisoned multiple lives. In his presence, I finally understood the full weight of what Sarah had carried, not just guilt over losing Michael, but terror of the man who had orchestrated that loss. "You have no power here anymore," I said, stepping forward. "Sarah's dead, and your secrets died with her." His laugh was a blade wrapped in silk. "Secrets? You think that's what this is about?" I built a life after Sarah, a respected career, a family untainted by scandal. And now you want to what? Resurrect ancient history? Destroy everything I've worked for because some teenage slut couldn't keep her mouth shut about our little arrangement? Michael moved with the liquid grace of contained fury, but I caught his arm. "That's what he wants," I murmured. "Another reason to paint you as the violent offender, the mistake he was right to throw away." Understanding bloomed in Michael's eyes, not just anger now, but a deeper, more strategic intelligence. I saw Sarah in that look, her ability to see through facades to the rot beneath. He relaxed under my grip, a predator choosing its moment. "You know what I found interesting, James?" I pulled Sarah's letter from my pocket, savoring the flicker of uncertainty that crossed his face. "The dates. You started grooming Sarah when she was 15, not 17 like you told everyone. We have the emails, the hotel receipts, the careful paper trail you thought you'd erased. I wonder how your tennis academy board would feel about that." The mask slipped. Beneath the polished veneer, I glimpsed the coward who preyed on vulnerable girls, who discarded his own son to protect his reputation. "You're bluffing," he said, but sweat had begun to bead on his forehead. "Am I?" I met his gaze steadily. "Sarah may have kept your secrets out of fear, but she was also a nurse who understood the importance of documentation. Everything's here, James. Everything. The kind of evidence that doesn't expire, doesn't fade, doesn't care how much money you throw at it." Lizzie moved then, crossing to stand beside her brother. The resemblance between them was suddenly stark, Sarah's strength reflected in two different mirrors. "You should leave," she said, her voice carrying all the quiet authority her mother had wielded in the ER. "And you should stay gone. Because if you ever come near my brother again, if you ever try to hurt what's left of our family, we'll burn your carefully constructed life to the ground." The threat hung in the air like smoke, and I watched James Carter, tennis coach, predator, architect of so much pain, recognize the shift in power. His carefully curated reality was built on the silence of his victims. But Sarah's voice had risen from the grave through her children, and its truth would no longer be contained. He left without another word, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. We listened to them fade, for people bound by blood and betrayal, until only the sound of our collective breathing remained. Michael broke the silence first. "She really kept everything? All the evidence?" "No," I admitted, meeting his eyes. But he didn't know that. Predators like him live in fear of exposure. Sometimes the threat of truth is more powerful than truth itself. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep in Michael's chest, rusty, uncertain, but real. Lizzie joined in, then me, until the apartment rang with the cathartic sound of chains breaking, of walls crumbling, of something new and fragile emerging from the wreckage of the past. Later that night, I stood in Sarah's closet again, the cedar box open before me. But its power to wound had diminished. The secrets it contained were no longer toxins but vaccines, painful but necessary agents of healing. I lifted each item carefully, the birth certificate that had started our journey, the letters Sarah had never sent, the fragments of a life divided against itself. "Dad?" Lizzie appeared in the doorway, Michael a tall shadow behind her. "We're ready." Together, we carried the box to the backyard. The summer stars watched as we built a small fire in the pit where we'd once roasted marshmallows as a smaller, more ignorant family. One by one, we fed Sarah's secrets to the flames, not to destroy them, but to transform them. With each document that curled and blackened, I felt her presence more strongly, not as a ghost of betrayal but as the architect of an impossible bridge between past and future. "To Mom," Lizzie said softly, holding the last letter over the flames. "Who loved us enough to leave us the truth, even if she couldn't speak it herself." "To Sarah," Michael added, his voice rough with emotion. "Who never stopped writing, even when the letters had nowhere to go." The paper caught fire, Sarah's words turning to light and ash in the summer night. But her truth remained, written now in the blood and bone of her children, in the new family we were building from the ashes of secrets too long buried. I looked at my daughter and the brother she'd found, at the empty chair where Sarah should have been, and understood finally that love isn't a perfect circle but a constant act of reconstruction. We build it from whatever materials we have, truth and lies, presence and absence, pain and healing, hoping that what emerges is strong enough to shelter those who come after us. The fire burned low, but we remained, 3 people becoming a family in the light of painful truth transformed into necessary illumination. And somewhere, I believed, Sarah watched, finally free of the weight of secrets, as her divided heart found wholeness in the children who carried her forward.